This is Main Street with Gary Allen. Now, here's Gary.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to Main Street again. Yes, your humble host, Mr. Gary Allen. Hope everything is well with you since the last time we were together. It's been a little bit of time, took some time off. We all needed a little bit of a break. Hope everything is well with all of you again. And we've got an exciting show for you today. I have a gentleman on who's been a friend of mine for a number of years. He's also one of the most creative individuals I know. He was on South Florida radio for 30 plus years, actually close to 40 years. If you count the couple of different radio stations he was at, he was also the creator and the host and the brain behind Beatle Brunch, which is a syndicated program since 1992. It's heard in 200 plus radio stations throughout the country. Check your local listings. We're also going to have at the bottom of the screen down here. You'll see it down at the bottom of the screen where you can catch all the information about brunchradio.com. And of course, you'll also see down here where this show can be seen on dbtv.tv on Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. You'll be able to see some of my past shows as well as this show in a couple of weeks. And I'm excited about that. But let me first of all bring on to you a gentleman who I have a great deal of respect for. His name is Joe Johnson. He is, as I said, the host and creator of Beatle Brunch. He was also on Love 94 for a number of years, Magic 102.7, where he also created Jukebox Saturday Night. He was on WLRN for a number of years. That's public radio in South Florida. He was also the host on many of the cruises, the Power Cruise, the Doo-Wop Cruises, Rock and Roll Cruises. We're going to show some pictures of him with some of the top rock and roll people in the music business and who he's interviewed and all of the good stuff and how he got started in this crazy business, and has he met up with the person that introduced him to him, and has he taken a baseball bat to him yet? So without further ado, a very dear friend of mine, and I mean a very dear friend of mine, would you please welcome Mr. Joe Johnson?
Hey, Gary, how are you, buddy? Good to see you.
I'm doing fine, sir. I'm doing fine.
You know, I always judge a friend if you can sing, what's that song? Johnny Angel. If you can sing Johnny Angel to their name, they got to be a good person.
Gary Angel, Gary.
Oh, Gary Allen. Gary
Allen. Oh, okay.
How I love you. Anyway, thanks for having me back.
Oh, you're more than welcome, Joe. It's been way too long, but you've been very, very busy between the radio station WLRN before you decided to retire, and then of course the cruises that you've been doing over the last couple of years. And you've been a busy little fellow. So the last time I had you on, I think Ron Hersey was with us as well, another dear friend of ours.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, he's over at WIOD.
WIOD doing the traffic in the morning. Traffic and news.
Yeah, absolutely. You have been in this business and you've been in the South Florida community. You grew up there like I did for many, many, many years. But it doesn't really matter whether we're talking about South Florida or Philadelphia, New York, Chicago. The radio business nowadays is pretty much the same, pretty much wherever you go, except for the landscape of whatever city you're in. And I have watched it go from a business that I loved very much, couldn't wait to get into it. And now you find people running away from it left and right. I know you got involved in the radio business. You're a super, super talent. People hired you left and right. People were bidding for your services left and right. What would you say is, they keep saying AM is dead. AM is dead. I don't agree with that, but it sure isn't looking great.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many choices to listen that AM barely ever comes into my head because there's Spotify. And I was at my brother-in-law's house yesterday. He spent the whole afternoon watching YouTube, what do you call it?
YouTube channels?
YouTube promos and little things about different shows that were on. And that was his whole, instead of watching one of the shows, he watched like a 2-minute wrap up of it and he went on to something else. So forget AM, FM, shortwave, those kind of things. I did it because my dad was a jailer for the Dade County jail system, and he hated his job. My brother-in-law was a police officer, unfortunately killed in the line of duty.
I'm sorry to hear that.
My sisters both worked for the police department. My mother did. So they would come around like, what are you going to do? I go, certainly not doing that. So I would rather, and they all, and two of them were firefighters as well. So, and air traffic controllers. I wouldn't have mind that, but you
Yeah.
get fired by the president every couple of years. So anyway, no, I got into it because I thought it was fun. I won this record from Love 94 back in '79. It was Bobby Caldwell, and it's actually has red vinyl in it. So
Yeah, which means it's a demo.
yeah, so it's a promo. Yeah, you can go up on eBay and probably get tens of these for $1 a piece.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but anyway, that's what I wanted to do, and so I won that record. It was skipping when I went to play it, so I drove up to South Beach. Their Love 94 Studios was right by Joe Stone Crabs, so I used to
Yeah.
get off the air and walk over there. But I asked if I could see the program director, and what the heck is a record that's skipping? What am I getting? So he took me in the back and he showed me it wasn't the record. I didn't have my little tightener on the record enough, but he gave me a new one, and I said, listen, while I'm here, are there any jobs that I could have? So he put me in charge of traffic for the morning show. The morning host was Skip Herman. Remember Herman and McBean?
Yeah.
So it was Skip Herman. I never knew him. I'd heard him, and seems like a nice enough guy, but he in my opinion, he was a little hot. He had a little hot side. So he broke down a door one time in there. So, but no, he came in. He was a good jock, and he was legend in the market later on. So I got this is the best part. He gave me this radio, AM radio, that had AM presets, and he preset them to like WIOD and 790 and 940 winds and all that, and he gave me the times that they did their traffic. So that's what I would do. I'd go on its IOD at like 6:03, write down the Alabrera and whatever else was flying, 610 Sky Machine. I would write down I would try all their, write down all their traffic, and I'd bring it in and give it to Skip, and he would put it on the air, And eventually when they hired Greg Budell to take over Skip, and I went in to give him the traffic, and he couldn't read my writing, so he just turned my mic on. No, Joe, you do the traffic. And that's how it was born. It was a necessity live on the radio.
Yeah, it's almost similar to my story. I was an intern at WINZ when I was at the U. My first internship. My second one was at WIOD. And one morning I was in there to do my internship on a Saturday of all days with production. And the girl who was supposed to come in and read the news, the update for the first couple of hours of the show, she wasn't there. She didn't show. No. She didn't call. She didn't show up. She didn't do anything. And the production director said, well, Gary can read. He knows how to rip and read. He's really good at it. So I went in. Next thing you know, I'm doing that for a while. Now, I didn't do it every weekend, but I would do it a couple of weekends out of the year, pick up a couple extra shillings. And that's kind of how I got introduced to being on the air. Yeah. Once you get vaccinated by being on the air, you don't want to be anywhere else.
Right. Yeah. I was the same way. I didn't even know to get paid. I think we got paid $2.10 an hour.
Wow.
At 1194. And this building was really small, had one production room, and then it had like two offices in the studio. But one of our main jocks, after Greg Budell left, he got hired away by Waxy. He's a big superstar, great guy.
Yeah. Greg.
Another guy took over, and he had a little trouble getting into the station. He was not showing up. So people would call up. This one lady would call up and say, "Oh, he lives in my building. I'll go knock on his door." So it's like 6:30 in the morning, and she comes back, and he came in, and he was mad. I said, "Well," he goes, "Why'd you have to knock on my door?" I go, "Well, how else he didn't like telephones, and the iPhone hadn't been invented yet."
Yeah.
So that's how we had to get him up. And sometimes we would say, "Hey, can somebody go wake up such and such?" I don't want to embarrass him on the air. So he doesn't do that anymore. He's a great guy. He's a play actor. He does plays.
Yeah. So how did you get from Love 94? Which, by the way, was Love 94 at that time across the street from Criteria?
Oh, no. Criteria was in North Miami Beach, like 180th and like Biscayne.
All right, because when I was doing stuff, because you were at the bus too.
Well, I got there after they were the bus. They were Love 94. Like they played like 25 Jackson Browne tracks 100 different Buffett tracks. Very mellow. If you ever
Yeah.
hear the bridge on the satellite, it's very much like that.
Yeah, yeah. But I know there was one recording studio not far from in Miami
Well,
Beach.
in Miami Beach, it's the Bee
Where
Gees.
where the Bee Gees were.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That's like 18th or 20th, facing downtown Miami across the bay. That I'm sure it's still there, but you'd only have Barry alive, and the three brothers always lived really close to each other.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, shame.
And Barry, he was always very kind. He was always very nice. The other brothers were very nice too. Andy, I didn't get to see very much, but the other two I did, and they were all very nice. They were very quiet. They didn't really, they weren't very pretentious at all, and it was really cool. So when did you leave Love 94 and you went to where you really call home?
Well, I
For
left there. I was
30
asked.
some. How long were you at Magic?
Let's see, Magic about 27 and a half years.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the good thing about it, I mean, I worked with a great bunch of people at Love and Magic. I mean, at Magic and Light FM. Light FM was the other station in the building. And then we
Right.
had 790, the ticket. So we had those three. But I was there for 17 and a half years. And then Entercom came in. And I think they're called, I don't know what they're called now. But they're way below the bottom of the stock market. But anyway, they fired everybody. But so they fired the whole staff except for about 5 people. They left, and I left there. And a friend in a couple of months, I auditioned for like a weekend shift at Magic because a lot like Mindy Lang, my friend, was working there, and other people. So me and that same guy that we had to wake up in the middle of the night, him and I went and we auditioned for mornings. So they actually put us on the air one morning, and we did our little shtick. We didn't really have much planned, and at the end of our shtick, we were in the production room and we saw these 4 or 5 guys huddled around a speaker. And as I got to know them, I said, "You guys were listening to us, weren't you?" "Yeah, we were." They were Anyway, they didn't hire either of us, and till about 2 weeks later, they asked me if I would come do it, and not mornings, but come be the creative services director and write all this promotional stuff and do weekends fill-ins.
Right.
So
Right.
that was the greatest station. And people come up to me sometimes and say, "Joe, is that your real hair?" No, they come up to me and they say, "Joe, if I win the lottery, I'm going to put Magic back on the air." I go, "Well, don't count me in. I did it already over there."
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So,
Yeah, and
but I became kind of the archivist for, unbeknownst to me, for everything of the station. Literally, one of the reasons my wife and I pulled our backs is putting all this stuff out to the curb. And I had 2 guys come over and pick up like 150 reel-to-reels of like listener comments or
oh
"Hi,
my
this is
God,
Leslie
yes.
Gore.
Yeah.
This is Lou Christie. Hey, we listen to Magic." So we had all those things, and I didn't want to throw them away. So I put like a mini ad on Facebook, and believe it or not, within 10 minutes, I had 2 guys that wanted to just take everything. I said, "Just come get it." My wife wanted me to put it on the curb and the trucks run over it. I said, "No, it's my life here. If
Yeah.
So they're going to take a lot of the air checks and digitize them and put them on. There's a real radio or something, a website that I can call back and tell you.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, a friend of mine, I think, said you can get on there and you can check. There's air checks on there, and there's a whole bunch of other things. But while you were there at Magic 102.7, you also created Jukebox Saturday Night. Before we get to the Beatle Brunch, you created Jukebox Saturday Night, which was a fabulous, successful show, funny. The pranks that you played on people, and I think don't we have a recording that you sent us of some of your?
You have you have like a long, an edited down version, but I sent you the 1 minute thing where these 2 guys called in, and I pranked them. I don't know if you have that. It's only a minute. It's pretty funny.
Yeah, Tommy, if you can find that, and then we'll listen to that, and then of course start with the stuff on the bottom of the screen. That would be great too. How did Jukebox Saturday Night come about?
They across town, they had the Wolfman Jack show on Waxy 106 at one point, and then they got rid of it. And on our station, they just were playing music on a Saturday night. And I loved being on the radio, but I like being able to talk. And the certain shifts that we would have, you'd sometimes go 20 minutes and not say anything. So
Yeah.
with Jukebox Saturday Night, I carted up all these drop-ins, David
Yeah.
Letterman and different things from TV shows, and George Costanza from, Seinfeld, little clips. And I just worked them in and out of music and stuff. And we had carts back then. They looked like 8-tracks. And I don't have one in here. They look like 8-tracks.
It's too bad we were closer back then, because I could have come in and done drops for you with my impressions and had some fun.
Yeah. What's your good impression? Oh, I did hear the one coming in that you did one under the
Oh,
radio.
yeah. I started out doing the Kennedy family way back when Von Meter was alive. By the way, brunchradio.com is where you can find out all you need to know about Beatle Brunch, which has been on the air going up on 33 years very soon.
Labor Day weekend. Yep.
Very, very soon.
Sorry.
But Jukebox Saturday Night was a major hit. But yeah, I mean, I've done a lot of, of course, Jay Leno, who you wrote some comedy for. I've known Jay since, I was like 9 years old,
Yeah.
and, and he doesn't even talk like that anymore. People would say to me when I would do Jay on stage, well, how come you're not getting a high pitched voice? I said, because he really doesn't talk like that anymore. His voice is kind of mellowed down, and he's not performing that much anymore, but he's still out there doing it. When did Beatle Brunch first come into your mind, and when did you first put something together? And I know it was May
31st was the first.
May 31st, 1992 was the first one. And how did that go over with? Oh, there you go. There you go.
Yeah.
There you are. Beatle Brunch. Right. Yeah. There's a Fab Four there, right.
And the Fab Fifth right in the middle there.
Oh, yeah.
Is that your hair,
by the way? Is that your hair, by the way?
Until the end of the hour. I have to get it back to the people by 5.
But yeah, how did it come about? And was it right away? Did the management of Magic go, yeah, I like that?
Well, luckily the management was 2 guys that own this, or 3 guys that own the station. It was, I forget the name of their company. But they were just 3 guys, like a lot of the old radio was when we were growing up. So they hired a program director, Rick Peters, who was the guy that hired me the first time, Love 94. So he was our program director, and we were both big Beatle fans. I bought a 1992 Mitsubishi Eclipse, and it was the first car that I've ever seen that had a CD player in it. So I was going to meet my family way down in Cutler Ridge, and I lived in Pembroke Pines.
Right.
So I grabbed a couple of Beatles CDs and I put them in the car, and on the 45 to an hour ride that I have, I listened to all these Beatle outtakes, CDs, and live stuff and everything. And I said, man, it's too bad there's no Beatles show on the air down here, because it's really missing. For a while, Waxy ran a show called the Lennon Talks or whatever. So you can get that.
No, don't worry about it.
So anyway, it was in that car that I thought, man, it sounded so good. It had the 6 speakers, the surround sound and all that stuff. So when I got back to work on Monday, I said to my boss, Rick Peters, I said, hey, it'd be great if somebody down here had a Beatles show that we could listen to or whatever,
Right.
I said, I really want to put one together. He goes, okay, put one together. And now you put me on the spot. So I didn't have a studio at home. I came in on the weekend, and I just wrote a script, and I kind of mocked up the show, and I played it for him, and he goes, great, we'll start it next week. So that was a demo. I wasn't really sure it was the version I wanted to put on the air, but we ended up doing that, and we promoted it highly. And the station, Sconix, that's the company. It was made up of the 3 guys' names, Scott, Nixon, and there were 2 other people. So I went ahead and produced shined the version up a little bit, and we played it on that Sunday, May 31st, 1992. And it seemed to be a big hit, and I enjoyed it. And it's led for me to go to Liverpool a couple of times, tour Abbey Road Studios.
Right.
A lot of cool things like that. Go to get an interview with Paul McCartney, which was the day it almost never happen for a couple of reasons. But and it's been great. And I know that when I interview people, I'm not really going, so in 1971 you joined the Army. I'm more like, hey, what's your normal day like, or whatever. And I did you're right, I did an interview with Jay Leno a couple of times. Yeah. And I knew what it would take back then. I knew what it would take to get it going. I go, Jay, what really gets your goodle, man? What makes you mad? And then he would go, I hate when these kids and like whatever. So it was great. And the jokes I wrote for him, a friend of mine was really Joan Rivers, joke writer. Yeah. And she would do the Tonight Show. He would fax in like 3 pages of jokes. So when he was going to have, when Jay was filling in for Carson, my friend Bob Glickman is a comic writer to this day. You probably know him. He asked me if I'd help him write some jokes for Jay. And believe it or not, we wrote like 25 jokes in the afternoon. 3 of them were mine. And 3 of mine, I mean, got on the air.
Oh, wow.
And I'll tell you one of them. It's real Jay. You have to think Jay when you're writing and it goes like this. Well, today Ronald Reagan announced is retiring, and he's going to be leaving office, and also Dick Clark is stepping down. Between Dick Clark and Ronald Reagan, the what's it called, the hair company had to lay off 2,000 workers.
Yeah. Well, it's funny too, because now Jay and I both have the same color hair. I mean, it's just it's snow white as all get out. But Joe Johnson is joining us here on Main Street. He is the creator, the narrator, the owner of Beatle Brunch, which you can catch on some of your local radio stations throughout the country. You can catch it there, brunchradio.com. Check it out. You want to join in and have some fun with that. And also, don't forget about my show here. You can catch on Tuesday nights on dbtv.tv at 7 p.m. You'll catch a lot of my old shows. This show will be up there in just about another week or so.
That just rolls off the tongue. What is it? DBTV?
dbtv.tv. Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Main Street with me, little old Gary Allen.
Grecian Formula Company. That's the name of it.
Yeah, it was the Grecian Formula Company. I can tell you what gets Jay mad. Because I've seen him lose it a couple of times. He just he when he would do the man on the street interviews, and he would have school teachers on there, and he'd be asking him questions about history, and they couldn't answer the questions, and the school teachers, that would get him. Because I used to say to him, what do you do because I know you would cut the camera after every interview. He said, I would tell them what the answer is, and I'd say, how can you be a school teacher? I mean, but he's usually pretty mild mannered. When did it start going nationally syndicated, Beatle Brunch? Was it a couple of years later?
Well, what happened was the company that owned us, the 3 guys, they had 4 other stations. They had Indianapolis, Rochester, Laconia, New Hampshire, and Baltimore was a great market.
Baltimore.
So that was 5 stations that we automatically had. And the guy that hired me, Rick Peters, was the national program director of all of them. So he placed a call. And he said, you're all going to start a new show on May 31st, 1992, and it's called Beatle Brunch, and it's an hour, so make room for it. So they didn't have a choice, but they ended up, some of them still play it to this day.
Yeah.
And, radio is sometimes not everybody's favorite go-to now, like we were saying before, with all the other channels and things that you have in your life.
Yeah.
But a lot of people make a beeline for it. And if your station doesn't carry it, or they go into sports on the weekend or something, you can go to brunchradio.com and you can get a membership in the Beatle Brunch Club. It's like $4 a month. We don't make any money. We just pays our internet fees and everything. But it keeps every show. And we have hundreds of shows going back from this Sunday back to 1992. Not every single one, because some of them are on DAT tapes, which are difficult to transfer.
Right.
But we're trying to do it. And we've got several hundred on there. And we have shows called Old Brown shows. So those are really like 20 to 30 years old. So that's the best thing to do if your station doesn't carry Beatle Brunch.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great show. I mean, here's my question to you on this one. You do a show for an hour, and I've called you sometimes in the morning, because you and I talk. When we do talk, it's usually early in the morning, because we're both early risers. For those of you folks who don't understand that, we're both morning guys, and we did morning shows. So you're used to getting up at 4:30 in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning. Now, if I stretch it beyond 8:30, my body goes, it's time to get up. But how do you come up with all the different concepts? I mean, you come up with so many different types of concepts for each show. Do you base it on the popularity of this song, that song, or is there a theme that runs through it?
Yeah, there's always a theme. In fact, I've done a couple of shows over the years, and the show is called Guess the Theme. And I'd play like Help, Wait, Money, songs like that. And I'd play them throughout the hour. And I would, at the end, ask, okay, what was our theme? What do you think it was, Gary?
Was
Misery.
Love.
Nope, that's another. Misery is another one. Let's see. Told you help. Um, let's see if anybody knows. No, they can't call in at the moment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
They're songs with one word for titles.
Ah,
So I do
okay.
stuff like that. I played a show last week. It was the Beatles ask questions, and the questions were really songs like how do you do it if they had done that song? Whatever questions are. And it's
Right.
funny, I noticed at the end of the show that one of the songs should have had a question. It's called Ask Me Why, but it has no questions in it. So
Huh.
yeah, it's anyway, I just come up with, I mean, obviously the anniversaries, Pepper, and
Yeah.
Hard Day's Night, if something's going on, in fact, I have to do something with this movie company, it's all over YouTube and all, is doing a film on the Beatles, but they're doing 4 films at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's going to be one with Ringo's point of view, one with George, one with John, one with Paul. And they've already
Mhm.
hired the actors. I don't think they look anything like the Beatles, but you can
No.
find their pictures anywhere. So it's going to be the first time they'll have a multi release on the same movie on the same day. But
Yeah, the thing about it is that they're I don't think that people will ever get tired of the Beatles. I said this to you once before when Ron was on, that if the 4 of them were alive and they said, for 1 week, we're going to go to one city in the world with the biggest stadium we can find, and every night we're going to do a 2-hour, 3-hour concert. In 20 minutes, it would be sold out for the entire week.
for sure,
And
yeah.
I can't even imagine the type of stadium that they would have to go to. Now, I've been to the Rose Bowl, I've been to the Coliseum in LA, and those are huge facilities with 100,000 plus people. But I can't, for the life of me, think of a more innovative group than the Beatles were, because I know that, like for instance, Sgt. Pepper's came about because of the innovation of the Beach Boys with Pet Sounds. But the Beatles came up with so much, thanks to George Martin in the studio, of things that later groups tried to incorporate into their music. Besides just being one of the most highly successful groups ever, they were one of the most innovative groups ever, and they have left their stamp on the music industry. And I would imagine, as far as Beatle Brunch is concerned, you're picking up young people as a new audience every week, every month, every year.
I hope so. I hope people listen to this and check it out. Check it out at brunchladio.com. You can hear some samples. We have one section of is completely free. That's that you go into the media tab and poke around there. You'll find some of them don't require a password or anything. So
Yeah.
we just want to get the word out about the show, and the Beatles are still a big part of everybody's life. I mean, they just had a Beatle Festival about 7 or 8 days ago in New York City, and they're going to have another one in Chicago in the fall or in the summer. And there was just an event locally for us in South Florida called Beatles on the Beach.
Yeah.
That was about 3 weeks ago, and it was a great event. They had Ringo's drummer, Greg Bissonette. He's really a super guy. So you get to meet some level of royalty
Okay.
with the Beatles. But it's
Tommy, bring up that picture of Joe with Paul McCartney as he tells the story of the interview that he did with Paul in Tampa and how it almost didn't happen.
Yeah, it almost didn't happen. I was here working in Miami at Magic, and he was rehearsing his world tour at the American Airlines Arena. So it was only like 10 miles away from the station. And his publicist called up and said, "Hey, would you like to interview Paul McCartney tomorrow night?" I said, "Yeah, that'd be great." He says, I said, "Where's it going to be?" He says, "Oh, it's going to be in Tampa." And I said, "It's going to be in Tampa, but I'm right here in Miami, and Paul is 10 miles away rehearsing for his Paul." He goes, "Oh, you don't want to do the, interview?" No, I definitely want to do the interview. So I made up a lot of questions because I had the new CD, Chaos and Creation in the backyard at the time. And so I go to Tampa, get out of the car, park, and wow, there's not very many people here for a McCartney concert. And I was
Right.
at a different arena, like a public for where they show plays, like a Broward Center kind of a place.
Right.
So instead, I get back in my car. There was no GPS, no phones. I had to find out how to get there in 1992. So I finally got a parking space, and the guy wanted money, but I was already late. And I go, I promise, I'll pay you later. And I grabbed my stuff and went on to the concert area. And they had invited me to watch the sound check, but I was late. I missed it because all the doings with my car and stuff. So I sit down, and I had a similar shirt. I had that shirt that you're seeing, similar, and I had a T-shirt under. It's a good thing because it was soaking wet. This was September 17th, 2005. So Paul's there, just like you see him. He was super great.
Yeah.
Sometimes you'll interview a star, and they'll go, I'll say, so your new album? Yeah, I got a new album. So what else you got? Or yeah, I was in the Beatles. What do you like? So, but Paul was so awesome. He goes, Joe, you do a Beatles show? I said, I said, yeah. He goes, Beatle Brunch, I think it is. And he was really sweet. And
he actually knew it.
Well, he might have been briefed,
Yeah, but still he remembered it. I mean, you're right. A lot of celebrities don't know anything about the host at all. That's pretty cool.
I think he had the Signal app, so he was able to get that going. So anyway,
oh God.
So anyway, they didn't slide mine up in there. So anyway, I get ready to record him. I had all these questions written down and everything, and some I was just going to talk. Some was just a conversation,
Yeah.
But I had a mini disc player. I wish I could go back behind me and pick it up, but I should have put it here. It looks just like a Walkman, but it was all silver, and you could put mini discs in there and close it. And there was no iPhone to record on. So just that. And I went to start it, and you just push record, that's all you had to do. And record was stuck. It wouldn't go in. And I opened it up again. I put it back. It wouldn't go in. And I had new batteries in it. I had tested it already. And I'm sitting here, and Paul goes to me, so your little tape recorder's not working. I said, you know what? I went like this on the front of it, and all of a sudden it snapped into order. And I was able to do like a 29-minute interview, which is really great.
Yeah.
And we do have it on the website under, there's a audio section called Brunch Bites. You'd have to just enter in Paul McCartney, and you'll find it.
Did you find out anything interesting during that?
Did I find out? Well, I asked him, if he ever took singing lessons as a kid. He told me no. And we talked about a lot of the songs. There's one song on that album. It sounds very religious, but he was saying it's not, but it's up to you to figure it that way. But yeah, it was just a conversation, and I had questions mainly about the new album. When I was going in there, the publicist pulled me aside. He said, no questions about the Beatles, no questions about Linda, no questions about his Linda's death, and otherwise, and nothing but no Beatles, no talk of Beatles, the new album and the tour. That's all you're to talk about. But it didn't matter because he would talk about it, and I would say, I'm trying to remember what I said to him, and he just started in with the story. Oh, I know what it was. He was talking about songs that are, maybe they could have been better that he wrote, and I said, well, like, which one? He goes, well, I saw her standing there. She was just 17. You know what I mean? And I said, yeah, I remember that song. He goes, and he's like, probably should have changed that because she was just 17. You know what I mean? But it's a little young. So we talked about that. But I can't remember anything in specific about it except I was really nervous, and he was really sweet. And all of a sudden, everybody just left. The film guy, video guy. I wish I had a tape of that. The publicist and a still photographer named Bill Bernstein, who was kind enough to give me a couple of those pictures that you saw. It was an unforgettable experience, and I thank him for that very much.
Contrast that with the interview you did, I believe, with Ringo.
Well, Ringo was he you would call it. Well, he's still around, so I'm happy for that because he looks great.
I like him. I just think there's something really.
Well, he's always in a hurry, so maybe he packs too much into his day. I'll tell you what, I saw him recently during that CBS special of his country album called Look Up, and he looks fantastic. He's 84.
Yeah.
And I just hope he doesn't trip or something happen or get in an accident or fall asleep.
Well, he had two of my favorite ladies on there, Reba McEntire and Miss Trisha Yearwood.
Yeah.
I have to call her that because otherwise I've been told by a certain husband of hers, if you don't call her Mrs. Trisha Yearwood, she doesn't really get upset. She's a very nice lady. You can call her Trisha all you want, but her husband is an extraordinary performer. But how was Ringo though? Was he just like Paul?
Yeah, you get the thing is they have these hookups all hooked up, so you have 10 minutes and also a minute less. So who's this? Can you hear me? Oh, it's Ringo. What? Joe? What's your name? Joe? Yeah. So you have all that going on before you start.
Yeah, you do.
But I have to roll him in because I have like 5-6 things I want to talk about, and he's going off on a tangent about EPs that he used to buy when he was a kid, and they were like country and stuff. And I'm going, yeah, but what about the tour? What about that new film, the Fleet with the Let It Be that just came? Oh, it's beautiful, the Let It Be thing. He's going to. Finally, I got him to talk about something besides old 45s.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
He's perfectly great, and I'm very honored to have him interviewed him 5 or 6 or 10 times.
Let's dispel a couple of things, okay?
Please.
Joe Johnson's joining me here on Main Street. Gary Allen with you. And you can catch Beatle Brunch on brunchradio.com. You can also catch this program on dbtv.tv Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Hope you tune in and catch some of the old episodes that I've had with some of the great interviews. Let's dispel a couple of things.
Sure.
Someone that you and I both knew,
Okay.
Mr. Roby Young.
Roby Young, what a sweetheart.
Started out that whole thing about I buried Paul and play the music, the thing backwards and everything, and with the bare feet on Abbey Road and all this other stuff. I mean, that went on and on and on for a long time, and there's still some people that live in conspiracy world that still believe that the gentleman who thinks he says he's Paul McCartney isn't really Paul McCartney, but that is Paul McCartney.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is, I talked to Roby. He was a good friend of Rick Shaw, and I was a dear friend of Rick. So I did meet Roby a couple of times, and he was really complimentary and everything, and that was nice because he was a legend. But we talked about the how he started that. Somebody called in, and he was on the overnights at WNBC or something in New York City. WABC, I think it was the 10 Wins or whatever it was. So somebody called in, hey, Roby, did you look at the White Album? There's a picture on there that looks like Paul's laying in a bathtub and he had his head cut off. And, so they all started. So he goes, what? And he tells the story of the listener that just called. And then more clues, people started coming in. It's 2:00 in the morning. And they're coming in, they're calling. So the program director calls in and says, stop it, get back to programming. You're fired. So like on his first night, he got fired. So I think he just got up and walked out. And then the next night he was on another station in New York City. But Roby was a great guy. But here's the thing. About 20 years ago, this guy named Gary Patterson, he's no longer with us. He's an author.
Yes. I've had him on the show when I was doing the Express late night.
Yeah. So I have
Gary's no longer with us anymore.
Right. But he had a book called, I was just going to have the name of it. The Walrus Was Paul is the book.
Yes.
And, it's the author sadly passed away, but you can go on eBay or Amazon and get it for like $5. The reason I say it, a lot of the clues are stupid, but there's a bunch of clues that he says, Gary said, you couldn't have put that there accidentally and had it come up with what it did. If you took your mirror and held it up to the album across, it would, instead of saying, with the Beatles or whatever, it said 10/10 he die. And it was like October 10th, 19. And I didn't bring it into the room here, but I have these keychains that have on the back of them, they say 28IF. So it says, I know the LM and IF, 28 if. And those mean Linda McCartney widow, 28 if he were alive.
Yeah.
So
Gary was a fascinating guest. I had him on actually a couple of times.
I did too.
And not only, and he also had a book out about, that they died all before they were 27 years old or 21 years old or something like that.
Joplin, tons.
A lot of them. And he was a fascinating guest. God rest his soul. He was fascinating to have on the program. I did that when I was doing the late night show on the Express out of San Antonio, which was a lot of fun. There's also another rumor that went around. By the way, the thing with Roby Young, it died out eventually as far as being on the front pages everywhere. but it did. I mean, he had a special on ABC or NBC or something at one time, but it did eventually die out. But there are some people who still believe in that thing.
Yeah.
When they broke up, there are a lot of rumors. Yoko, this, that, and the other. The truth of the matter is, from what I understand, George came to all of them first and said, I think I want to do something on my own, and I'm getting tired of this. We're in the studio. I've got a lot of my own ideas. And he really did. He had some fabulous music. George Harrison was a truly talented young man.
Right.
And when he passed away, but from what I understand, it wasn't Yoko so much, although she probably added her 2 cents into it because she was kind of a strange person. But it was more of George and the other guys going, yeah, we kind of want to go our own separate way for a while and see what happens.
Well, the one thing is, if you watched 2 years ago, they put the Beatles. They got most of the footage of the 30 days that they spent in January, 1969, recording tracks for what would be Let It Be, and the album before that. But if you go and watch the special that Peter Jackson put out, it's like 6 hours of cuts from that and songs from that event, in January. And if you look and you watch it, I know you can edit out anything and you can block out stuff and you can change sound, but they're laughing, they're having a good time. They're doing 2 of Us, like the Everly Brothers, they were, and doing Get Back a bunch of times. I can see why George, we've like 15 of those Get Backs in a row, but that's what it takes to be, to have a masterpiece like that. So
Right.
If you ever go back to that, I think you could still go to the, who I think might be Hulu, but you can Google it, and they've got the whole. They actually had even the whole Let It Be film up there.
Wasn't that entitled Get Back?
Yeah.
Rock?
Okay,
we got an echo going here. We had an echo going there. We had an echo going there for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it was that so much. Are you okay, Joe?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, it just seemed like every rock and roll group, every group anyway, even the Stones, they take time off and they go off and they do their own thing a little bit. But every group eventually reaches a point, like TV shows, movies, they reach a point where they've done as much as they're going to do. There's no more storylines to go, and we want to go off and do our own thing. But it's a shame that they didn't live. I was in New York the night that he was shot, that John Lennon was shot. I wasn't anywhere near to the Dakotas, but I remember it was Howard Cosell on Monday Night Football that announced of his passing, that he was shot and assassinated.
And it was done from the Orange Bowl as the Dolphins were playing the Patriots.
Yeah.
I was doing mornings at Love 94, so I didn't watch the game. I was driving in. We're driving into work. We and my morning partner, I used to pick him. And WINZ, all these AM news stations are just playing Beatles after Beatles after Beatles. And I waited, and Mike Ranieri came on at WIOD. Mike Ranieri, we're playing this music because of Beatle. And I'm like, I'm just finding out like everybody else was, because went to bed at 9 o'clock to get up at 4, So, it was a terrible day, obviously. And sometimes you'll see Jane Pauley's end of the Today Show. She just burst out sobbing. It's amazing, because it was, like Gary Patterson said in his book, he said the Lennon shooting, the assassination of John Lennon is our Kennedy assassination. Because I was like 3 or something when Kennedy died. I know my parents were crying, and I was
a little bit older. Yeah.
But it was, so Lennon's death is really, can be looked at a million different ways.
Oh yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, for someone 3 or 4 years old, it would be. Now, for me, the Kennedy assassination was stealing my president away from me by an Iranian who was just a plain kook, who's dead now. Sirhan is dead. The albums, as I discussed earlier with you, Sgt. Pepper's came about, because of My Cat Just Bit Me, because of
that's what caused the album.
Yeah, the cat just bit me. Well, I mean, we're talking about Pet Sounds, which was out by, which came out.
66.
which the Beach Boys by Brian
Right.
Wilson,
Yep.
who created the song. They heard it and they went, "Uh-oh, we've got to go back in the studio and do something, and we got to do something really special because this is a heck of an album." And Pet Sounds is one heck of an album.
Yeah, and they came out with a bunch of remixes years ago that were they were stripped a cappellas. And when you hear their vocals on "Wouldn't It Be Nice" by the Beach Boys from Pet Sounds, you're not going to get anything better. And you're right, the Beatles heard that and went to do to do something their version of it, and it was in tribute to, not because of.
Yeah.
And Brian, I've actually asked him that about one time and what his favorite Beatles song it is, and he said "Here, There, and Everywhere." So
yeah, that's a really good song. When She Was 64 is one of my favorite ones because I remember the video for that, them going up and down the stairway with that. Let's get to something that I'm looking forward to. And Tommy, can you bring up that first collage of pictures of the different interviews that Joe has done on these doo-wop cruises and the Flower Power cruises and
Rock and Romance cruise.
The Rock and Romance cruises. Can you bring those up for us, please, when you get a chance? Joe Johnson is joining us here on Main Street with Gary Allen. He's the host, creator of Beatle Brunch, which can be heard all around the country. Go to brunchladio.com and you can check it out. You can become a member there for like $4 something a month or something like that. And there's some free stuff that comes off of there. It's a great show. I mean, it is the history of the Beatles, one of the greatest rock and roll groups to ever set foot on the stage or in a studio anywhere. That would be great. Tommy, what about that collage? Have you got it going there? I know he was having some trouble with it earlier. And here we go. Yeah, there we go. Okay, and you could probably see that a little bit better than I can, but tell us about some of the people here. I know that's John. There's John Lodge in the lower right-hand corner.
That's me with John Lodge. That picture straight above, all the way on the left, that's Frankenstein, Edgar Winter. Next to him in the sunglasses is Todd Rundgren. Next to him is from the Eagles. He was there for 27 years. He replaced Don Felder. Sorry, Don Felder.
Don Felder, yeah.
And then, of course, you mentioned John Lodge of the Moody Blues. What a sweet man. The first night of the first cruise I was with, where most of the staff has dinner, and his daughter came over to me and said, "My father would love to meet you if you would come over." And I thought, wow, really? What made him want to meet me? But he was fantastic. Oh, that's me. And on the top left, that's me introducing a band. And to my left is Jason. He's the real cruise announcer, cruise host, but I take his lead. So, and I think below me is doing one of my Q&A panels. And then the picture on top, again, it's John Lodge, who's pretty amazing.
John, that was one of my favorite groups, the Moody Blues, Pink Floyd. I really, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, et cetera, et cetera. I really, really enjoyed them. I think we have another one here too that I selected.
Yeah, Mickey Dolenz.
Yeah. Is he the only one still alive from the Monkees?
Yeah, but he calls his show Mickey Dolenz Tribute to the Monkees, I guess, because, he didn't own the name or anything.
But Davy Jones lived down that way. I know he lived down.
Davy Jones was, when I was on Magic with Donna Davis in the morning we did mornings for like 5 or 6 years. I probably forgot to include it in there. But he used to come by the station with his wife. He married this woman that he met in theater. They were doing a play down at Coral Gables at the stage. And they ended up getting married, and they would come in. They go, "Joe, this is Davy Jones. Magic 102.7, and you're in there, buddy."
A buddy of mine also knew him too, and he said he was always one of the most gracious gentlemen in the world.
And I think the other Monkees, it's like every other band, right? Michael Nesmith would never go out with the Monkees from what I heard, as long as Davy Jones was still in the band. So.
Why?
I don't know. Who knows why? I don't know. Even if it's true, I mean, that's what I was told. I don't want to spread something that's not true.
I mean, I know his mother came up with Whiteout or something like that. And
that's Mike, the guitar player Michael Nesmith. He came out with there's Whiteout and there's another one. She
You
came
know,
out with the other one.
and so he didn't ever have to work again for the rest of his life. You
And if he
know.
did, he could cover it up and lie about it where he was working.
All right, you've done some other interviews with some very interesting people. Both of you and I interviewed Melissa Manchester. We went over Paul and Ringo. The Guess Who you interviewed as well.
Yeah.
John Lodge you interviewed. Hair Supply and 10cc and many, many others. Did any of the interviews that you did, any of them surprise you at all? That you learned something that you didn't know before, that you were
Yeah.
like, whoa, it
I'll
took
tell
you
you.
back
I'll
a
tell you
bit.
what happened. I was going backstage with Jason that we just showed the picture, and we were going to introduce the band. And
Mhm.
so, and I hadn't really met them yet. I just for a second had he want to be introduced. I didn't want to do the wrong thing, and he was great. And I had those keychains that I told you about, 28 IF,
Mhm.
and so I had interviewed them earlier in the day. I had interviewed them earlier in the day at this Q&A that we have while the boat's at sea.
Right.
And I was surprised to learn how ridiculous Beatle fans they are, like bigger than all of us, because they were coming of age in 17, 18, forming their own band. They were from Australia, but they cut their teeth in New York. So I couldn't believe, and they were huge Beatle fans. And Russell came to me, Russell Hitchcock, the lead singer, and he goes, "Joe, have you got any more?" He asked me as he's getting ready to go on stage. He goes, "Have you got any more of those keychains?" He says, "I know what it means, and I'll show it to people, and I'll stump them." And so back in my cabin, I had like 50. So I gave him like 50 of those. Then the
Yeah.
next time they were on the ship, again he asked me, Joe, have you got any more of those keychains? So, I was surprised to hear that. But him and his writing partner, the two guys from Air Supply, they put
Right.
on an incredible show. You might say Air Supply, oh, my girlfriend listens to them, but
Yeah.
I listen to them play. They rock out, and Russell goes up and down the aisles with a wireless mic, and it's a really great show. And that's I think what I love most about the cruises is you really have one-on-one time, because after every event, they
Right.
set up tables and they'll take pictures with you, autographs, stand up and
Right.
so,
Well, the one person I want to get on here, but I can't get a hold of his daughter, is John.
John Lodge.
Yeah.
He may not be in town because he just got back on a cruise. The
I
cruise
know,
is
but I'm figuring if you can get in touch with her, maybe we could work something out, because does he live here in this country or does he live in England?
I think he still lives in England, yeah, from what I understand. But he's
Oh,
been on a lot of our cruises, and I see that he's coming up on the. Let's see, he's going to be on the Flower Power cruise, March 28th through April 4th.
well,
And
I definitely want to get him on and then have you on at the same time with him,
yeah,
to talk about some of this stuff, which is, kind of the cool thing to do. Now I have some interesting questions for you that particularly pertain to the business itself.
okay, sir.
How is A1 going to affect our world?
A1. Well, they can make us, if we're sick, maybe it'll make us feel better or look better. It's better to look good than to feel good. Remember, Monk?
Oh, yeah. You look marvelous,
Yeah,
darling.
really
It's
good,
better to
really good.
look good than it is to feel good. Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, I don't have any way to get ahead of them on a 1 minute's notice, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems to be everywhere. I know voiceover actors were very concerned. I was part of the new contract with SAG-AFTRA as far as utilizing their voice one time and then duplicating it again and again and again, which is what they do on video games now anyway. Because I used to do a lot of video games when I lived in LA and when I was in Fort Lauderdale with our good friend Pat Appleson.
oh yeah.
Yeah, I used to do. Pat lives up in North Carolina now, but you know. Who are your favorite top 10 5 groups or singers on
You're
your
talking to
Mount
me.
Rushmore?
Are you
Yeah,
talking to me? You
I'm
talking to
talking.
me? You
I'm
talking to
talking to
me?
you.
Yeah,
I'm
okay.
talking to you.
I'm gonna
By the
tell
way,
you.
would you tell Coop we really want her on the show one of these days?
I don't see her anymore. I hope she's still she's
Is she?
around the walls somewhere. Like I said, we were lifting heavy stuff, and she had her
And I want one of those
catering.
shirts that she'd made for you, of you, so I can wear it around up here.
People will think you're me wearing me.
That's right.
I want to tell you before I forget.
Yeah.
We were talking about great books. Gary Burr, Burr. You can look him up on his website in case I can't remember the name.
Yeah.
He is in Ringo's album band. He doesn't go with the All Stars, but he does when they do an album. He plays guitar. And so he called me up one day, and I'm like, really, Gary Burr? He wanted me to interview him because he just had a book out, and it was called A Fantasy, Beatles Fantasy. And the premise was that Mark David Chapman, who's the man you're never supposed to say the name of, who killed John Lennon, is driving around in Hawaii one night before he came to New York to do the deed. And he got into a head-on collision, and he went through the whole windshield, and he was killed. So in other words, he was killed. So what would happen to John Lennon? So as it turns out, John lives. George is healthier, Ringo and Paul. And Paul gets the idea that they're going to put the band together, and the book is like a fantasy. But, I think about that. Would you want, obviously we would want John Lennon to be alive. So I wonder if they would have done something. I think that Lennon even says it in one of his last interviews. He goes, I don't know about getting together and playing the Beatle thing. We did it for so long, but I could see writing together and doing again. They actually did. John wrote some songs for Ringo's Ringo album, and Harrison, if you look, like you said earlier, it's a who's who. It's like every.
All you got to do is watch that tribute show they did to George,
Yeah,
and
right.
you look around and you go, holy mackerel! It's like everybody and everybody. We're out of time, my friend.
That's why I wanted to get that book in. I think it's called The Fantasy. Gary Burr, and I'm just plugging him politely because it's a great book and he's a nice guy.
He is Joe Johnson from Beatle Brunch. Catch it out on brunchradio.com.
Become a member.
Become a member. Enjoy it. Joe's one of the most talented young men that I know of this time anywhere. Married to one of the most beautiful ladies that God ever put on this planet.
Where is he? I'm looking to see
she's around. She's around. Anyway, thank you, Joe, and stay right where you are. I'll be right with you just a couple of minutes, but I want to thank all of you out there for taking the time to join us. And don't forget, Main Street on dbtv.tv, Tuesday nights at 7 p.m. Catch us on some of our past shows with Stephanie Powers, Don Most, you name it. Joe Johnson will be on there in just a couple of weeks. I want to thank all of you so much. We're going to be back next week with another fabulous guest right here on Main Street with me, Gary Allen. Take care and God bless.